There was always something about that prophecy that always rubbed me the wrong way. Never trust a prophecy that can be taken in two ways. He could return because it's Britain's darkest hour, sure. Or his return could cause it. Today, on the Comic Book Report, Once and Future Volume 1, The King is Undead. Stick around and check it out. Greetings all, my name is Dominic and you're watching The Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I finally get to talk to you guys about Boom Studios' Once and Future. But first, here are some quick facts about today's collection. Once and Future was written by Kieron Gillen, illustrated by Dan Mora, and colored by Tamra Bonvillain. The issues collected in this 160-page trade paperback collection were first published by Boom Studios in 2019. This volume collects Once and Future issues 1 through 6. And before we continue on, I would just like to issue a brief spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the entirety of this collection, as well as commenting on plot points. You've been warned. Okay, and here is our first look at the Once and Future Volume 1, The King is Undead collection from Boom Studios. Right away you might notice that this was a nominee for an Eisner Award for the 2020 Best New Series. Those of course are very prestigious comic book awards, so that bodes well right from the jump. As you can see, we have some great art from the series donning this trade paperback, which is a standard size with glossy pages. I should note as well that they have the first 3 trades collected in a hardcover edition that Boom Studios released as well. It looks like a gorgeous edition, but I wanted to start with trades because I was a little unsure about this series and just kind of wanted to check it out. As far as what Once and Future is even about, basically the series start with this group of fanatics who get their hands on the sheath or scabbard of Excalibur, Arthur's fabled sword. This group believes that they can resurrect Arthur from the dead and restore England to its former glory. Enter Duncan and his gran. Duncan is kind of a bookish, early middle-aged kind of man who discovers that his grandma was a monster hunter for all intents and purposes. This recovered relic leads these two back into the world of hunting supernatural and mythic figures, which is new to the grandson Duncan, who had no idea up until this point that any of this really occurred in his world. Along for the ride as well is his girlfriend / associate Rose. The 3 of them form a bit of a team to try to stop the resurrection of King Arthur, who is believed to be kind of a doom-bringing villain, not this mighty noble hero. And honestly, that's kind of the setup for this series. There's so much more to it though, as they bring in more and more Arthurian legend, as well as other kind of mythic, fabled heroes of old in literature. And frankly, the series feels very European, which I enjoy, especially if you're going to retread on some Arthurian tales. Admittedly, the literary nerd in me was absolutely tickled whenever a new Arthur character was introduced, or a new creature, or something else that referenced these other old myths and texts. But honestly, the fresh, modern take on these old legends would not have held as much weight, in my eyes, if it wasn't matched by the beautiful illustrations of Dan Mora. This is my first introduction to this artist's work, and it is just spectacular. I am awed, I am humbled, I am moved by what this man has accomplished with this book. The art is somehow both mesmerizingly beautiful and absolutely visceral and grotesque. Of course, that's due in no small part to the story of this. But again, what Dan Mora has accomplished here leaves me begging for more. I think without the words or the story, even having these images, you'd have a beautiful art book on your hands. And with these images, you also have the coloring, which I don't always include the colorist when I read the creatives at the beginning of my videos, but I had to include Tamra Bonvillain in the list of creators today, because the colorist on this book is what sets this apart, or at least brings it up to a whole nother level. I would say that the coloring favors a kind of cooler color palette, which really serves this kind of dreamy quality to this book when you think about these legends encountering the real world. But you also get these really, really striking greens and purples whenever the villains show up in particular, which almost reminds me of something you commonly see in like Disney tropes. When I see that shade of like kind of neon electric green with a purple like this, I think this is some kind of villain, and sure enough, that is something I see throughout Once and Future, and it's done so well. I need to say too that Gillen is no slouch in how he has created these characters. In addition to Duncan, Gran, and Rose, we also have some truly twisted other family dynamics happening within these pages that I won't spoil for you, as well as the villains, including Arthur himself. While I will say this was an exceedingly strong first volume that left me pretty satisfied as far as there's a tale that is told here that is completed, but really sets up the foundation for what happens next in this world. I do feel like this series did have some get up and go, and what I mean by that is I feel like it kind of almost moved too swiftly in the beginning. I think I would have liked to see a little more character development right up front, but Gillen does a fantastic job of doing that character development while they're in the main action, while they're writing the story. You get engrossed right away, and he has to keep the train moving, and I respect that. But I was a little overwhelmed just at the beginning, feeling like this was kind of getting away from me. But still, such a strong first entry, and it had me buy the other 2 volumes that at the time of this recording have been released in trades, and I just finished them. And so far, I'm really pleased with this series. I think for me, it's not one of my top favorites I've ever seen, but it does have some of the top art I've ever seen, and it's enough that I'm going to keep purchasing these trades, at least for a little while. I have to see where this series goes, and I'm eager to find out what these creators have in store for the rest of Once and Future. I do think, even now that it's been a few weeks since I've read this trade volume, I know that what is going to really stick with me from this series is some of the striking, iconic images. This book really does live up to this epic scope, and the synergy from this creative team just leaves me breathless. As in a lot of trade paperbacks, we do get a cover gallery and some bonus features at the end of this book, which I always love to see, particularly with artists like this. And yeah, this is a strong first offering that I think is a great foundation to build this series. And with that, I believe all that's left is to give this book a grade. For its jaw-dropping art, with coloring that makes me pay attention, and its very modern characters juxtaposed by legendary and mythic characters from literary history, I think I can safely say that the Comic Book Report has to give Once and Future, The King is Undead, a B. This series is above average and a comfortable recommendation to anyone looking to get into comic books, or fans of old legends, myths, or the literary tradition. There's a strong sense of voice and purpose within this series. Even if I felt like it was a bit rushed in those early issues, I caught up. And I felt like this was a very serviceable origin to build upon for the rest of the storytelling in the Once and Future universe. Once and Future feels innovative while still honoring the past, and the art is very easily a chef's kiss, top shelf, something to behold kind of art. If you're looking for something new to read, I would heartily consider Once and Future. And that's going to do it today for the Comic Book Report. Thank you so much for watching. Please check out some of my other videos and go ahead and give me a subscribe, and have a good one.